Good morning, Shabbat Shalom. This is Valley Beth Shalom Torah study for a Shabbos morning. I'm Rabbi Ed Feinstein, joined this morning by my dear friend, Rabbi Marc Gellman from South Florida. This morning, Parshat Tetzavah, the story of the creation of the priestly vestments, and that's what we'll be reading in Torah this morning. But of course, on Monday night is the holiday of Purim, and it is the joyful holiday of our calendar. It is our Mardi Gras, a night of feasting and celebration, a little bit of drinking, maybe even. And the book that we're going to be reading is one of the most puzzling and strange and in many ways inappropriate books of the whole Hebrew Bible. It is the book of Esther. Now, these days, as we have all grown acutely sensitive to the rising tide of anti-Semitism, both here in America and around the world, this book has a special resonance because this is the book of how a diaspora Jew lives in a world where we aren't totally at home, not totally at home. Story opens, of course, with a very silly king named Achashverosh, who is the king of chaos. He's drunk in every scene of the book. He opens with a 6 months World's Fair to show off all the stuff that he's stolen from the world that he conquered, and then a 7-day wine feast. And on the last day of the wine feast, of course, he commands his wife Vashti to come and appear before all of his buddies. She refuses. She is banished. A beauty contest, or rather a conscription, ensues. And of all the young women brought together to be the new queen, it's Esther, niece of Mordechai, the Jewish leader of the community of Shushan, who was brought into the palace to be the queen. And that's how the story began. So every little kid in our shul is going to dress up either as the beautiful Queen Esther, or as the evil Haman, or as the brave Mordechai. I'll be dressed up as the silly king, of course, because that's my role in the story. But it's a remarkable story of how we survive as a diaspora people. Because Haman, the bad guy, comes to demands that Mordechai bow down. Mordechai refuses to bow down. He doesn't bow down to anybody, much less this very hateful, small man, Haman. And Haman decides to show him a lesson by destroying his people. He goes to Achashverosh, and in the third chapter, there's this remarkable speech. It's one of the great speeches because it's the first literary representation of what we call classic anti-Semitism. He says to Achashverosh, there is a certain people in your realm who is not like all the rest of us. They don't observe the same laws. They don't keep the same custom. They are different, and they are a threat. We must destroy them. And that is the line that has echoed through our history as the line that makes Jewish life so very difficult in diaspora. And the whole story of the book of Esther is, how do you survive in that kind of a world? How do you survive in a world of chaos? The word Purim, the name of the holiday, means to throw the dice, because that's how Haman chose the day that he was going to destroy the Jews. But more than that, it's a picture of the world you live in. This is not the nicely ordered moral world of the Torah. This is a world of chaos, a world of random, arbitrary consequences, a world where justice and injustice is all mixed up. And in order to survive in that world, you have to have the courage of Queen Esther and the wiles of Mordechai. Now, Marc, I know you have a wonderful, wonderful method of taking biblical stories and reading them differently than anybody else reads them. So tell me the story of Esther.
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's a wonderful summary of Persian Jewry and of the story of what happens there. And your story is exactly how we were all taught it, that Esther is the heroine of the story, and Mordecai encourages her to save the people, but she does it. And, there's truth in that. However, In my reading of the story, it's a little bit different. First of all, why is Esther even there? She's there because of a competition to be queen. Okay. Why is there a competition to be queen? Because Vashti, the real queen, refuses to appear naked and touch the royal golden scepter, which I think is a euphemism. And she refuses to be humiliated before his friends. And so the king just wipes her out. She's gone. So to me, the real heroine of the story is Vashti. She's the one who says, you can't treat women like they're meat. You can't treat me like I'm a piece of meat. And she isn't given credit for it. So because the story is about Jewish heroines and Jewish heroes. But my reading of Purim is that, the first reading is that sometimes our salvation comes from heroic non-Jews who are acting in a way that inevitably and eventually helps us. The second reading is that there is no, this is of course well known, there's no reference to God in the Megillah. There's a thing, your help will come from another place, which refers to God, but there's not any verse that says God said or God did. And to me, that's the most mature relationship with God that we have in the entire Tanakh. God is not around in Megillat Esther. In the book of Esther, God is not around to solve our problems. God expects that we will solve our own problems. And that's exactly what happens in the book. Through court intrigue and connivance, we solve our problems, and Haman is hoisted on his own petard and eventually goes to the gallows, which he had prepared for Mordecai. So I love that message as well. I love the idea that we're in charge of our history, we're in charge of our fate, and we can't be sitting around waiting for Superman, super God, to intrude in history and settle our affairs. And that's my reading of Purim.
But is there any God in the story? So traditionally what we see is a God who is behind the scenes, a God
Right.
who is working through Esther's courage, working through Mordecai's wisdom, a God who is manipulating. I mean, what's the famous line? In the 4th chapter, when Mordecai comes to Esther and says, you got to save us, she says, I don't want to save you. I like living in the palace. And Mordecai gives her 3 answers. He says, first of all, you're not going to pass forever, kid. Eventually, they're going to figure out who you are. And second of all, if you don't help us, we'll figure something out, but you'll never have a connection with us again. You will lose connection with your past. You will lose connection with your family. And most of all, you lose connection with your inner identity. Your own identity will be cut off, right? And then the third thing he says to her, which is the most wonderful thing he says to her, which is, maybe, who knows, he says, maybe it was just for this moment that you were put in this position. Now, that idea that, and we've all had that experience, haven't we? That experience that somehow life conspires in some way to put you in the right place at the right time with the right capacities. And it just takes a moment of courage to move up. And that's the God in the story. At least that's how most of the tradition sees it. You agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. But that God is not in the story.
Right. Well, God behind the story.
Opportunities for us to see the right way to proceed and to have our courage move the story forward. And in every catastrophe that was not averted for us, it was not averted because we or other people around us didn't have the courage to stop Haman. The reason for the Holocaust is not because God refused to help us? It's not on God. There's nothing about the Holocaust that's about God. It's about us. It's about the fact that from really before 33, when he took power, there was no one to stop Hitler. And so the rise of fascism in Germany led to a war in which maybe 200 million people were killed. And of course, 6 million Jews. So the end result of this is we must take responsibility for making our own history. God provides us with support, with a covenant, with hope that what we do will succeed. But God does not offer us an option of sitting around on our tuchuses, waiting for God to come down and wipe out our enemies the way God did it with Korach, with an earthquake.
Or Pesach. I mean, what you're saying is
Or Pesach.
that Purim and Pesach are very different visions of history,
Yes.
right? The Pesach vision of history is evil comes and tries to destroy the people, and God comes with 10 plagues, with frogs and blood and darkness and hail, and that's Pesach history, and the sea splits. That's Pesach history. But the book of Esther is giving us a different vision. It's Purim history, which is, you want to be saved? Get up and do it. I'll help you, says God. But the courage, the ingenuity, the method has to come from within. It's not going to come from without. It's, in some ways, it's a much more, I don't know, realistic, is that the right word? Even mature vision of how history
Mature, yeah.
We would all love the world to be like Pesach. We'd all love evil people to have frogs crawling everywhere.
So how do you explain the fact that Pesach wins over Purim 9 times out of 10?
Because it's the master narrative that history has hope. It is the master narrative that lets us know that even as we're standing at the edge of the Red Sea with Pharaoh chasing us from behind, there's still a notion, a moment, the possibility of hope, that it's a world of possibilities. It's a story of hope. That's why at the end of the Seder, you're going to stand up and sing Eliyahu HaNavi, right? Even though the world is as broken, corrupt, deceitful, and evil as we might experience it, we're still going to have hope. Pesach gives us the hope. But Purim says, all right, there's hope. But here's the hope. The hope is you're going to find the courage to do the right thing. I think the two holidays together make a wonderful dialogue.
I agree.
About how history works, about our role in history, and where God is in the history.
But
where God is in history.
Yeah, it does trouble me that Purim is treated as a foolish holiday, a holiday for children.
Oh, I can explain this to you. I'll tell you why. Because when you have to deliver bad news, the best way to do it is in a funny story with a little bit of humor, right? What's the bad news of Purim? The bad news of Purim is, listen, the world that we read in the Torah, a world that is run by a God of justice, that ain't the world you're living in anymore. You're living in Achashverosh's world. You're living a world of moral randomness. You're living a world of Purim, throws of the dice. You're living a world where a guy like Haman can come to power. In that world, you're going to have to find the courage to bring morality, to give morality power. You're going to have to find the courage to do the right thing. Now, that's a very bitter message, Mark. That's a really hard message. So what do? You sugarcoat it with a little bit of joy and a little bit. You put a mask on it. You put a mask on it. You put a little. You tell, and part of it is to make it palatable. Part of it is because, God, we seem to be winning, at least for the moment. And I think part of it is a sort of Mavin Yavin, because I don't want children to hear this yet. So we'll make the holiday a goofy holiday. But every adult in the room recognizes the deep seriousness of what's being said here.
Well, that's a good theory. I tend to move in a very different direction on Purim's role, aside from its meaning, which we've just talked about, how deep and mature its actual meaning is, despite how frivolous its celebration is. I think the celebration of Purim, like Mardi Gras for Christians, represents, and in other traditions, it's Diwali in Hinduism and others, every religion is about limiting your choices so you don't act like crazy animals. And you live a civilized existence bound up by moral law. Well, that's a little hard when you are a crazy animal. And that's what we are, crazy animals in a large way. So it's necessary for all religions to have a day of release, a day when you're supposed to drink and dance and scream and yell and sound groggers, and then you go back to your orderly life filled with law and obedience. So I think Purim is also about the release that is necessary in every legal and non-legal religious tradition.
I love that idea. I actually love that idea a lot, because what it teaches you is that the canons of behavior, the etiquette that we keep in synagogue, for example, the etiquette that that all of this, we have to remember that this is man-made. We made this. This is made by human beings. This is not natural. It's not built into us. It's not metaphysical. We chose to live this way. And the only way to remember that we chose to live this way is one day is to break the rules and then realize, all right, now we're ready to come back to the rules again. Right?
And it humanizes everybody. It humanizes rabbis and congregants who dress up funny.
That's the most wonderful thing. We all come, and all the reverence, all the canons of reverence. I remember when I was in seminary, in yeshivas and in seminaries, we got to make fun of our professors. So all year long, 364 days a year, we treated our professors with the deepest reverence, because they were such learned men and women, people of deep devotion to the Jewish people and to Torah, and incredible learning. But one day a year, we had a skit, we made fun of them, we imitated them, and they came and they laughed. They came and they laughed. And there was something so refreshing about these sourpuss professors who came and just laughed with us at who they are and at themselves. It was a joyful day of solidarity. And the next day, we went back into class again with the reverence, wondering, did we have to apologize for something we'd said? And it wasn't. There was just a sense of love.
Yeah.
There was such a sense of love that we could all have a good laugh at each other's foibles and come back together and go back to the work of Torah. It was such a beautiful thing the day after Purim.
Yeah.
Now, but there is a tradition which I think we should mention, which in some ways recognizes the depth of this holiday, which is, according to one tradition, it's only one, but one voice of the tradition, in the world to come, when the Messiah comes and everything's perfect, the only holiday that will be left will be Purim, which is amazing.
It's the holiday of joy.
It's a holiday of joy.
Unrestrained, unmitigated joy.
Or to put it more pessimistically, even in a perfect world, you have to remember that there was a lot of evil that needed to be fought, and fought with courage, and fought by a very brave young woman who and that's also a beautiful part of this. The feminist part of the story is also beautiful. That the unlikeliness of the hero in a male patriarchal society, it was a young woman who saved us. Yes. She was the one who mustered the courage to stand up to evil and to call it out and to point to it and willing to take the consequences for that. And
Yeah,
that's most important.
it's all true. I don't want to push that part too far because I think it cheapens feminism a little bit. The story is not a feminist story as much as it does with Esther. And as I told you, Vashti. The truth is that the way Esther gets power is by becoming a part of a harem, sleeping with the king. And so it was her physical beauty and her lack of moral limits that enables her to get power. And that's not exactly a feminist message. It's more, this is the world that we had to overcome as women, where the only way we could get power was with sexual allure. And I think that can't be gainsaid, that can't be left out of the memories we have of Purim. It's
right. There's a very seedy side to this story.
Yes, that's what I was about.
There is a very, very low, messy, dirty side to this.
Yes, there is.
It's so difficult. So difficult.
But the other part, there's one other element I wanted to bring in. We as Jews have certain, how do I say this, inherited moral foibles that are particularly Jewish. There's all these stories, of course, and about Irish people who drink and they're drinking and drinking. For Jews, in the Middle Ages particularly, the biggest moral failing that the rabbis had to deal with was gambling. Gambling was a huge addiction. They called it masachake kubya, basically dice, throwing, craps. That's what we did. We weren't big drinkers, but we were big gamblers. And the rabbis used Purim in this way that I was describing before as a kind of moral and emotional release.
An outlet, yeah.
From the strains of legal existence. They used it to allow gambling. You could gamble on Purim.
Dreidel.
Well, yeah, but
no, you're right. You're right. In yeshiva, they played cards.
Yeah. So it also functioned in that way. But one thing is certain, and that is Purim doesn't get the attention it deserves. It's been relegated as a children's holiday where they dress up, and that's what Purim is.
Yeah, but not now. We've made it an adult holiday, Gellman.
Well, today we have.
We have elevated Purim.
Maybe we destroyed it as we elevated it.
God, I hope we do that frequently, destroy Jewish holidays. So
I
have to ask you a very deep philosophical question, which of course is the deep philosophical question of this time of year of Purim. You ready, Gellman?
I'm ready.
Which is the better? Which is more authentic, the latke or the Hamantaschen? Go ahead, babe. You're up.
So the story of the latke Hamantaschen debate began with Max Tickton, may his memory be blessed, at University of Chicago Hillel.
Right, he was
the first, and Danny Leifer, his successor, carried it on. And when I moved to Northwestern to be the Hillel director and Jewish chaplain up at Northwestern, I continued it there too. And it was a wonderful tradition. What we did, we invited the most erudite professors.
Right, at Harvard, it's online, you can get it. It's a debate between Steven Pinker and Alan Dershowitz. I mean,
yes, it's brilliant. And they would all think up amazing arguments for the latke and the Hamantash, basically Purim versus Pesach.
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah, sorry.
No one argues about Pesach.
No, but it was also about Pesach too, the way it got developed. But so my view about it is that the winner is clearly, absolutely, the Hamantash. And the reason the Hamantash is the winner is that the Hamantash is the result of complex human interaction with nature, in which we have to dry the prunes to make the mun, to make the lekvar, to make the filling. We have to make the dough. We have to refrigerate the dough and cut it in circles and make it in triangles. And the result is a baked good, a cookie, that is the result of human interaction with nature. The latke, on the other hand, is a grated potato. Yeah, with a little onion in it, and with the secret from my friends who owned Ratner's down on the Lower East Side. They said, Rabbi, the secret is about almost a half a cup of flour that you put in to help bind it. But it's basically great. It's hash brown potatoes, okay? And there's no interaction there. And it's fried, which is bad for you. I mean, Hamantash aren't health food, but it's fried potatoes. And so it's simple and it's plain, and there's no interaction with nature. And that's why, in the proper judgment of one of the great judges of Latke Hamantash debates in my life, me, I judge that the Hamantash wins. What do you think?
So, ladies and gentlemen, I know that today you were burdened by this philosophical problem. And today we have been blessed because we have heard the endorsement for Hamantash offered by Rabbi Marc Gellman, youngest graduate of Hebrew Union College, PhD of philosophy of Northwestern University, former chairman of the New York Board of Rabbis and the ethics committee of, of Feinstein Hospital.
No, don't.
Columnist for Golf Magazine.
Come on.
He has said Hamantash.
This is all true, by the way, but don't know.
I know. I'll keep.
Please
stopping.
Don't stop. Please.
I'll keep stopping. Stop. I'll keep stopping. That I have a much simpler reason why.
Please.
My father is a baker. My father, 95 years old, may God bless him with long and healthy years, made wonderful Hamantash. I was raised on Hamantash. Everyone in my family votes Hamantash. I do this out of loyalty to my father. You do it for these abstract philosophical reasons. Now everyone has every reason they could possibly want. Marc, I wish you a good Purim, a happy, sweet celebration, and everyone is watching Monday night. Find your way to a place, a shul, a minyan, a chavurah, read the Megillah, have a little schnapps, have a Hamantash. Remember brave Esther, wise Mordechai, cheer for the destruction of evil Haman, and feel sorry for Achashverosh, who just doesn't know what's going on in the world. And then the morning after, go out and give a few dollars to tzedakah, give a little matanot evionim, give a few dollars to the poor, that they might enjoy a Hamantash, they might enjoy a holiday as we do. I wish everyone Chag Purim Sameach and a very good Shabbos, Marc. Very good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos, my friend.